My name is Madison Brooks, and at 32, I believed I had it all. A solid career as a financial analyst in Manhattan, an apartment overlooking Central Park, and the trust of my family. I never imagined my own sister could bankrupt me. Today, that trust shattered. Logging into our joint savings account, I discovered a startling zero balance. $12,450.00 vanished without a trace. My heart pounded as I combed through every transaction, retracing my steps, desperate to find an explanation. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss. Minutes later, an email from an unknown address landed in my inbox. Pay up or face ruin. The subject line read, "Family first or last." Suddenly the reality sank in. This wasn't just money, it was personal. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, and now I'm famished for justice. Stick around, you'll see how I plan to make her pay. Trust breaks like glass, and once shattered, it never glues back the same. My journey to revenge starts here, right now. I grew up believing our family was unbreakable. The Brooks estate in the Hamptons stood on a bluff, overlooking Shelter Island Sound. Its cedar-shingled facade and wraparound veranda telling the story of 5 generations worth of legacy. My father, Jonathan Brooks, had inherited the property, valued at roughly $2,500,000, 0 cents in today's market, and every summer, our family hosted fireworks parties on the lawn, where neighbors whispered about the Brooks name with envy and admiration. Sundays were sacred. After church service in East Hampton, we'd pile into our white Escalade for the drive back to the estate. Parents in front, my sister Brooklyn and I squabbling in the back over who got the last blueberry muffin. These Sunday brunches weren't just meals, they were rituals of trust. Reminders that blood ran thicker than water, or so I thought. From an early age, I was the responsible one. At age 8, I taught Brooklyn how to ride her pink Schwinn bike along the 15 blocks of cedar-lined streets that led from our house to Main Street. I held the back of her seat, sprinting to keep pace, assuring her she would find her balance. When Brooklyn wobbled and screamed, I studied her, whispering, "You've got this." And she did, grinning ear to ear when she finally pedaled on her own. That memory became our binding myth, big sister guiding little sister to safety. When we graduated Cornell, Brooklyn with a degree in communications and me in finance, our mother, Catherine Brooks, gifted each of us $5, 0 cents, deposited into our first individual brokerage accounts. Mine grew steadily under a conservative mix of index funds. Hers, she channeled into a swanky online marketing course she insisted would scale her side hustle. I never questioned her ambition. Instead, I felt proud when she showed me her first paycheck from a small ad agency, $650, 0 cents for a week's work, which she used to buy me a birthday gift, a slim Cartier bracelet priced at exactly $650, 0 cents. I'd picked the model, she said, as a thank you for all those bike lessons. On New Year's Day 2023, we took my father's vintage Chris Craft out onto the Sound for a champagne toast. Afterward, Brooklyn and I slipped away to open a joint savings account at a local branch of Citibank, 20 USD, seated by our combined college gifts and summer earnings, earning a modest 1.2% APR. We imagined it as a sister fund, a private stash for future ventures, perhaps a co-owned condo in West Chelsea, maybe a side project, or even for emergency expenses neither of us wanted to face alone. I remember her lively laughter when I proposed the name Twin Trust, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of partnership. As spring turned to summer, I noticed she'd withdrawn $1, 0 cents 200 for an online certificate program in digital analytics, Fine by me. I assumed she'd pay me back when her side gig took off. I was oblivious to the little red flags: a half-hidden credit card statement with late fees, a terse email from a collection agency for a small debt. None of it registered as a conspiracy, just growing pains in a young adult's life. Our parents, too, were trusting. My father had left a family discretionary fund of $50, 0 cents zero, in a joint trust account, intended to help us through one true family crisis. Catherine confided in me once that she'd overheard Brooklyn on the phone arranging a meeting with a financial advisor in Manhattan. Nothing more than routine planning, she'd assumed. Aunt Margaret Collins, our maternal aunt who lived in Sag Harbor, nannied us during summers, and often cautioned me to keep an eye on that spirited one. But I always brushed it off. After all, Brooklyn and I shared secrets, clothes, even homework. What could she be hiding from me? When I landed my job at Goldman Sachs as a junior analyst, Brooklyn was there to celebrate, popping bottles of Moët on the rooftop of our East 55th Street building. She teased me about finally having the Brooks stamp of approval in the city's financial circles. I gave her a Rolex Oyster Perpetual for her 25th birthday, a modest $6, 0 cents 50 gift, compared to what our peers gave, but she hugged me so tightly I thought she'd crush me. In that embrace, I felt the warmth of sisterhood, unbreakable, unshakable. Yet in the back of my mind lurked a whisper of doubt. After all, I'd once discovered a cryptic email thread titled discretionary transfers buried in her archived messages on my laptop later. She claimed she was organizing tax documents. And that evening, she'd been defensive when I asked what she was doing. I'd let it slide, chalking it up to her sensitivity. Looking back now, these moments were more than innocent miscommunications. They were the first ripples in a pond that would soon become a tempest. But in those days, trust blinded me to the growing fissures in our relationship. I assumed loyalty was as automatic as breathing, as natural as being sisters, and so I never suspected that the twin trust account, our shared dream, could be weaponized against me. What I didn't know then was that while I was polishing spreadsheets and charts, Brooklyn was quietly crafting a different narrative, a narrative where I would shoulder the blame for every financial misstep she engineered. It began with small withdrawals and polite requests for reimbursement. But underneath her apologetic texts and borrowed sums lay the seeds of betrayal. Still, deep down, I believed in her. I believed she'd always have my back, until the night I discovered the first real warning sign. The night when our shared bank balance emptied to zero, and I realized how very wrong I was. That night, I understood that the child I'd once steadied on her pink Schwinn bike had grown into someone capable of sweeping away our shared future with a few keystrokes. And in that realization, the stage was set for a reckoning that would change everything between us, and for me to decide whether to forgive or to seek ruthless justice. I first sensed something was off one crisp January morning when I received a text from Brooklyn Hayes asking for $3,000, 0 cents, just for a month she claimed she needed to cover an unexpected rent increase on her Soho studio. At that point, our twin trust account still held a healthy $18,300, 0 cents, so I replied instantly, "Sent, let me know when you can pay me back and watch the transfer go through." But when the notification pinged on my phone, I noticed an overdraft fee of $35, 0 cents, and a late payment charge of $45, 0 cents, posted to my personal checking account fees I didn't recognize. A quick glance at the joint account showed a balance drop to $15,300, 0 cents, but I shrugged it off. Brooklyn must have withdrawn more than she admitted. 2 days later, I got an email from Citibank's fraud department. Unusual activity detected on your joint savings account. My pulse quickened. The alert detailed 2 ATM withdrawals of $500.00 each at 2:14 a.m. and 3:06 a.m. downtown times, when I was surely asleep. Brooklyn's apartment was on the Upper East Side. This was clearly not her doing. I forwarded the email to her, asking, "Did you use my card?" She texted back, "No, must be glitch. I'm talking to them." But her tone felt clipped. A seed of doubt took root. That same evening, during our weekly Friday night FaceTime, I tried to sound casual. Over the soft hum of her space heater, Brooklyn said she'd squandered a bit more than planned on a new certification program online. She blamed extra cost platform fees, she called them, but my instincts nagged. Why hadn't she sent me a receipt? Why now after months of smooth withdrawals? I tucked my concerns away, chalking it up to her busy schedule. But then came the mini hook moment. At 9:47 p.m., I received a voicemail from an unknown number. The voice, distorted but unmistakably female, warned, "Pay your siblings' debt by midnight, or see your credit in flames." My breath caught. The caller hung up after a brief click. I stared at the dark screen, heart pounding. Who would know my sister's debt and threaten me? I spent the next morning retracing every cent. Opening the Mint app, I scanned the Twin Trust transactions, a $3,000 ACH transfer, 2 ATM withdrawals, and a mysterious $750 cash advance fee. Total withdrawals hit $4,750, more than Brooklyn had asked. I called her, fingers trembling. "Brooklyn, what's this cash advance?" There was silence on her end, then a weak, I don't know. "I'll check." But I could hear her hesitation, the rapid intake of breath before she hung up. On Monday, I logged into my work email, finding a terse message from our family Slack group, an insider channel I'd forgotten existed. My mother, Catherine Brooks, had posted a screenshot of my bank balance, captioned, "Madison can't keep her finances straight. Maybe she should take a break from work?" Within minutes, relatives chimed in with sympathetic hearts and "hope you're okay" comments, but the implied mockery stung. My private struggle was now public spectacle. Later that afternoon, I met Harper Reed, my college roommate and closest confidant, for coffee at Joe and the Juice on Lexington. Between sips of ginger shots, I confessed everything: the unexpected fees, the strange transactions, even the threatening voicemail. Harper's eyes narrowed. "Madison, this is more than a glitch. It's targeted. You need to freeze the joint account and order new cards." I felt a hollow relief, but the betrayal cut deep. That night, I received a PayPal request from Brooklyn for $2,200 medical bills. The amount was alarmingly precise, matching neither her usual rent check nor any known expense. I texted back, "Provide invoice or doctor's note." 3 hours passed before she replied with a blurry PDF of a medical bill, no header, no provider name, just a line item: emergency care, $2,200. My skin crawled. It felt fabricated. My instincts screamed at me to investigate further. I hired a part-time forensic accountant, Elliot, and paid him a $1,200 retainer from my personal savings. He dug into the logs, the IP address for the suspicious ATM withdrawals, and the cash advance was traced to a public kiosk 2 blocks from Brooklyn's gym. Unlikely for my account. Moreover, the medical bill PDF had metadata showing it was created on my laptop 3 days prior, not by any hospital system. It was a forgery. The final trigger came at 2 a.m. when I found a text on my phone from a number saved as family obligation. It read, "If you don't cover the extra $2,200, 0 cents, and reinstate the joint account by 9 a.m., I make sure you lose your job." My knuckles went white as I gripped the phone. The threat was clear, personal, and chilling. Up until that moment, I'd clung to hope that Brooklyn was in financial trouble and simply escaped. But with the forged documents, the hidden withdrawals, and the menacing messages, I realized this was deliberate betrayal. The sister I'd once studied on her pink Schwinn had become an architect of my downfall. At sunrise, I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, staring at my reflection in the window. The first signs of trouble had grown from small, explainable hiccups into a full-blown conspiracy. And as my phone buzzed again, this time with another bank alert, I took a steadying breath. I knew where this path would lead. It was time to take control of the narrative and prepare for the reckoning to come. I still remember the night it all came crashing down. It was a brisk October evening, the kind where Manhattan's skyline glittered like fractured glass under a sapphire sky. Our entire family gathered at the Brooks estate on East 67th Street for our annual fall dinner, an event Dad insisted should be just between blood and bone. I arrived in a tailored navy sheath dress, my Ferrari red Louboutin heels clicking on the oak floors, carrying a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2015 I'd picked up after work. Brooklyn greeted me with that wide grin I once thought I knew, but even in her eyes I sensed something off, an unreadable glint that didn't belong. After a course of lobster bisque and seared scallops, Dad cleared his throat. "Madison," he said, voice steady as his steel glue gaze met mine. "Your sister's purchase is an investment for the family. I want you to co-sign on her loan." The hush that fell was suffocating. I looked across the table at Brooklyn, her expression half pleading, half triumphant. "A 2024 Mercedes-Benz Clore," Dad continued. $52,300. 0 down, fixed interest rate at 3.9% APR. Monthly payments of $825, 0 cents. I felt a jolt, as if someone had shoved me from behind. Co-sign up. Just 2 little words, but they cost a lifetime. Brooklyn's voice was soft, almost honeyed. I couldn't qualify on my own credit score. "This car is essential for my new consultant role, downtown client meetings, brand ambassador events." My chest tightened. She sounded so convincing. Catherine, Mom smiled encouragingly. "Think of it as helping your sister climb higher. You've always been the responsible one." The Tita pushed at the head, poised, while Olivia David's, our cousin, smiled politely but didn't meet my eyes. I forced a smile, glancing at the contract on the table, a sleek black folder embossed with City Auto Finance's logo. I picked up the pen. The weight of it felt leaden. I remembered the countless times I'd saved Brooklyn from scraped knees, lectured her on self-discipline, watched her bolster her confidence when she stumbled. "Family first," I whispered, signing my name in flowing curves. The ink dried bright, a declaration of loyalty I was determined to believe in. Mom raised her glass. "To the Brooks sisters, may we always lift each other up." Glasses clinked. I drank a timid sip of the Bordeaux, suppressing the tremor in my hand. We moved on to creme brulee, laughter warming the room. But from deep inside, an icy dread unfurled. What had I just done? Less than 24 hours later, the Mercedes arrived, blacked-out rims, diamond-stitched leather seats, purring like a panther. Brooklyn beamed, hugging me tight. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered. I brushed it off. I wanted to believe her gratitude was genuine. Later that night, As I tucked the paperwork into my desk drawer, I spotted a second envelope I hadn't noticed during dinner. My name was typed on it in bold red letters, urgent loan demand. Inside, a letterhead from BlackRock Financial Services, not Citi, demanded immediate payment of $15,000, 0 cents, as default insurance premium for the vehicle co-signal. Pay within 48 hours or face repossession proceedings, it read, plus a non-negotiable penalty fee of $4,500, 0 cents. My stomach dropped. There was no mention of this insurance clause in the contract I'd signed. Brooklyn hadn't said a word about it either. I confronted her the next morning in her Soho loft. The sunlight slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a brand-new display shelf of awards from her consulting firm. "Brooklyn, what is this?" I held up the BlackRock letter, voice tight. Her eyes flickered. A flash of panic, then she smiled, crooked. "Oh, that," she said, turning it in her hands. "It's just standard procedure." I thought the bank processed it automatically. "I'm sorry, I must have forgotten to mention." I felt a surge of anger, disbelieving. "You didn't forget," I snapped. "The clause wasn't in the Citi contract. This is a scam." Her posture stiffened. "You don't understand the world I'm in, Maddie. Clients demand security. I did what I had to." "You did what you had to?" I echoed, incredulous. "You used my good credit, my trust, to trap me into paying 15 grand extra. And now you're acting like it's just business?" Before she could answer, my phone buzzed. Another email from BlackRock. PAID stamped in bold green letters, $15,000, 0 cents withdrawn from my personal checking. My breath caught. "You," I started, but she cut me off. "Calm now. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. I handled it." Her tone was almost gentle, as if she were soothing a child, but I saw the steel behind her eyes, the calculation in her smile. I sank onto her velvet couch, shock and betrayal mixing into a bitter cocktail. How deeply had she planned this? The staged sympathy during dinner, the origins of the loan, the glossed-over details, the envelope hidden among my things. Every moment had been orchestrated. This was no impulsive misstep. It was a meticulously crafted trap. By the end of that afternoon, I realized two painful truths. First, that my sister could betray me so coldly. Second, that family first had always been her lie. And in that realization, a new emotion took root, not despair, but something darker. A fierce hunger for reckoning. When I left her loft, the autumn wind hit my face, reminding me that revenge is best served cold. I vowed then that I would turn every tool at my disposal, my savings, my legal counsel, my network of contacts, against the person who had weaponized our blood ties. The betrayal stung like acid, but it also ignited a fire I couldn't extinguish. That night, I drafted the first of many letters to my attorney, to Citibank, to the loan servicer. Every word was calculated, every demand clear. I would not pay another cent. The major betrayal moment had arrived, and with it the blueprint for my retaliation. Brooklyn Hayes had just signed her own sentence. I sank onto the cold marble bench in Central Park at 3:17 a.m. The city lights a ghostly glow through my tears. My mind replayed the scene on Brooklyn's loft. The staged gratitude, the hidden insurance clause, the sudden $15,000, 0 cents withdrawal, all laid bare in one orchestrated crescendo of betrayal. My phone buzzed again. Another overdraft fee of $35, 0 cents, and a returned check charge of $30, 0 cents, proof that the car I co-signed for was already bleeding me dry. I wrapped my coat tighter, wishing the night would swallow me whole. I dialed Harper Reed on speaker as I huddled under a maple tree. When she answered, her voice was calm but shocked. "Madison, you sound broken." I couldn't speak. Sobs caught in my throat like credit holds on my credit line. Finally, I whispered, "I've lost everything." My voice cracked. She stayed on the line for 20 minutes, long enough for me to recount every damning detail. How Dad's pride in our family investment had blinded me, how Mom's praise felt like salt in the wound, and how Brooklyn's final smile had carved a canyon between us. That morning, I barely made it to the office. My colleagues at Goldman Sachs noticed my puffy eyes. I blamed pollen allergies and delivered a flawless fiscal projections deck one that forecast a 2.3% uptick in Q4 revenues. Inside, however, I felt hollow. Each slide reminded me of trust I once had in spreadsheets and people. By lunchtime, I retreated to the women's restroom and stared at my reflection. My eyes, once bright with ambition, were now shadowed and cautious. I splashed cold water on my face, chasing away tears that refused to stop. My 401k balance flashed in my banking app. $12,850, 0 cents down from $20,000. 0 cents just weeks ago, thanks to Brooklyn's hidden withdrawals and the insurance scam. A lump formed in my throat. If this debt spiraled, I risked my credit score collapsing below 700, jeopardizing my mortgage pre-approval and future stability. I left work early and headed back to the Hamptons estate, seeking solace in childhood memories. The veranda where Dad taught me to play chess felt empty, the air tinged with nostalgia and regret. I climbed the narrow oak staircase to my old bedroom and opened a dusty trunk. Inside lay my Cornell graduation cap, that $650, 0 cents, Cartier bracelet Brooklyn gave me, and a stack of family photos. Each item stung a reminder of how deeply I'd believed in us. At 6 p.m., dinner preparations began in the grand kitchen. I lingered by the countertop, knife in hand, finely dicing shallots for the evening's coq au vin. Chopping calmed me. The rhythmic slice gave purpose to my tremors. But each cut also felt like slicing ties to the past. I tasted a drop of the marinade, sour, like my spiraling anxiety. Fluttering later as the round mahogany table filled with familiar faces, Dad, Mom, Aunt Margaret, Olivia Davis, I realized I couldn't pretend. I placed the shallots in a small ramekin and excused myself to the pantry. Inside, I collapsed against the shelves, clutching a half-empty bottle of red wine. The cork still sat atop the neck, mocking me with its promise of escape. My phone lit up, a text from Citibank fraud alert. An attempted $2,000, 0 cents, transfer to a shell company was declined. Relief and terror warred inside me. Brooklyn was still at it, pushing further. I slid the wine bottle off the shelf and downed half its contents in one swig, the tannins burning my throat. My vision blurred. A knock on the pantry door startled me. It was Mom, concern etched on her face. I opened the door, wine glass in hand, tears streaking my cheeks. She reached out, but I backed away. "What's wrong?" she whispered. I turned, voice hoarse. "You sent that Slack message telling everyone I'm incompetent." Catherine's lips trembled. "I thought it was an intervention. I wanted to protect you." I shook my head. "You sided with her against me." The hurt in my voice cut deeper than any overdraft fee. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in the guest room mattress, the springs creaking with every twitch. My bank app glowed on the nightstand, $12,850, 0 cents unchanged since lunch. But my life had shifted irreversibly. I remembered the line from that voicemail, "Face ruin." It wasn't just empty threat, it was prophecy. At sunrise, I packed a small bag, my laptop, phone charger, and the $3,500 0 cents retainer agreement for Samantha Wright. No jewelry, no heirlooms, just the essentials for the fight ahead. In the mirror of the hallway, I barely recognized the woman staring back, shoulders hunched, eyes dark, but beneath the despair, something flickered, a spark of resolve I hadn't felt since childhood, when I first studied Brooklyn's bag. As I locked the door behind me, I whispered to the empty house, "I won't let her break me." The emotional collapse had stripped me to my core, but in that raw honesty, I found purpose. The debt, the betrayal, the isolation, all would be channeled into a single mission: reclaim what she stole, expose her lies, and rebuild on my own terms. I hit rock bottom that morning, but somewhere between my tear-stained pillow and a cup of black coffee, a spark ignited. Scanning through my inbox one last time before deleting the family obligatory thread, I noticed an email titled "Protected Asset Inquiry" from Samantha Wright, attorney at law. I'd signed her retainer agreement, $3,500 0 cents, from my dwindling savings only days ago, hardly expecting immediate results. Yet here it was, like a lifeline in the storm. Samantha's message detailed a strategy: freeze the twin trust account entirely, file an injunction to halt any automatic withdrawals, and prepare a counterclaim for fraudulent misrepresentation. She offered to subpoena transaction logs, call records, and even social media metadata, all to prove that Brooklyn Hayes had intentionally deceived me. My pulse quickened. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. That afternoon, I met Samantha in her Midtown office. The mahogany conference table was lined with case files, folders labeled Brooks vs. Hayes in bold type. As she walked me through the paperwork, I learned that Brooklyn's shell company, one I'd never agreed to co-sign for, had processed an unthoracic line of credit disguised as a business expense. Samantha explained that we could contest the debt under New York General Obligations Law, SS 54-1, which protects co-signers from knowingly fraudulent loans. I nodded, absorbing every legal nuance as if it were oxygen. To gather hard evidence, Samantha suggested I reach out to Elliot Price, a former college classmate turned cybersecurity consultant. Elliot owed me a favor from senior year hackathon days, so I texted him immediately. Within hours, he provided a report: IP addresses for the $750 0 cents cash advance fee matched a coffee shop Wi-Fi 2 blocks from Brooklyn's gym, not the EpiN near my apartment. He also traced the forged medical invoices metadata to a PDF created on my laptop, confirming Samantha's theory that the file had been backdated to appear authentic. Armed with this intelligence, Samantha filed emergency motions that evening. She drafted subpoenas for Citibank, PayPal, and BlackRock Financial, demanding all internal emails and transaction logs. She even threatened to bring in a digital forensics expert to recover deleted SNS and WhatsApp messages. My out-of-pocket expenses had already hit $5,200, 0 cents, including her retainer, Elliot's fees, and expedited court filing costs, but every dollar felt like an investment in justice. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I laced up my sneakers and ran through Riverside Park. The crisp autumn air burned my lungs, but each footfall was a reminder I was still standing. I visualized the courtroom, the judge reading family trust violated by fraud, the gavel dropping in my favor. I pictured Brooklyn's face when she realized her schemes were unraveling. My heart pounded not with fear, but with determination. Meanwhile, Samantha arranged a temporary freeze on all joint assets. The next morning, I found an email from Citibank Account access suspended effective immediately. At least $8,500, of my funds, were safe now. Although I could no longer withdraw even my own money until the court hearing, I accepted the temporary sacrifice. It felt better than watching my balance dwindle to zero. Over the weekend, Samantha coached me on deposition. She sent me a 3-page questionnaire to recount every interaction with Brooklyn related to finances. I filled it meticulously: dates, amounts, email subjects, text timestamps. Each line I wrote felt like reclaiming a piece of my stolen identity. I realized that every small detail, every overlooked overdraft fee, every vague apology from Brooklyn could build the narrative of intentional deception. By Monday, the paperwork was complete. Samantha filed our motion for summary judgment, arguing that the forgery of my signature and the insertion of undisclosed insurance clauses constituted clear fraud. She even prepared a motion to dismiss the entire Mercedes loan as unenforceable due to material misrepresentation. I reviewed the draft in her office, heart swelling as Samantha said, "If the judge finds in our favor, you'll be fully exonerated and Brooklyn could face sanctions for contempt." That afternoon, standing outside Samantha's building, I took a deep breath. For weeks I'd felt like a helpless victim. Now I was an active force. The recovery spark had grown into a blaze of litigation. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through our message history, and composed a text to Brooklyn. "I've initiated formal proceedings. Let's see how you handle justice." I hit send and pocketed the phone. The sun broke through the clouds, bathing the street in gold. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the weight of betrayal replaced by the rush of agency. I'd spent years trusting others with my financial future: my sister, my family, my bank. They'd all let me down. But with Samantha's expertise, Elliot's technical prowess, and my own resolve, I was no longer powerless. The stage was set for a legal showdown that would not only reclaim my stolen assets, but also expose Brooklyn's elaborate web of lies. This recovery spark was more than just a step toward financial restitution. It was the rekindling of my self-worth. I had faced collapse, but I refused to stay down. And as I walked into the courthouse on the day of our hearing, I carried with me every ledger entry, every subpoena, every bit of evidence that would prove one truth. I was not the victim of unfortunate circumstances. I was the target, and I would win. When I walked into the courthouse on that brisk November morning, I felt armed for battle. My tailored charcoal pantsuit pressed sharply against my shoulders. I clutched a leather portfolio containing every shred of evidence: bank statements, subpoenaed emails, forensic reports, and even the original forged invoice. Samantha Wright rode shotgun with me, her confident stride matching my own resolve. As we passed through security, a photographer from the courthouse's local press snapped a candid, two women, determined to see justice served. Inside courtroom 4B, Judge Monahan presided over a narrow bench framed by oak paneling. Brooklyn sat at the defendant's table, looking small and anxious in her pastel blouse, so unlike the confident woman who'd once accepted my Ferrara red Louboutins as a congratulatory gift. She cast a furtive glance my way. The bailiff called the case, Brooks v. Hayes. My heart thumped in my throat, but I held my chin high. Samantha opened with a firm statement. "Your Honor, this case is about deliberate fraud, misrepresentation, and breach of fiduciary trust between sisters." She paced before the jury box, turning to face Brooklyn. "Ms. Hayes convinced my client, Miss Brooks, to co-sign a loan under false pretenses. She withheld critical terms, namely the $15,000, 0 cents default insurance clause, and orchestrated a covert series of withdrawals totaling $4,750, 0 cents. We will prove that these actions constitute actionable fraud under New York law. Next, Elliot Price took the stand as our expert witness. He unspooled a timeline on a poster board easel. ATM withdrawals at 2:14 a.m. Forged PDF metadata, PayPal request timestamps, and server logs tracing calls to a kiosk near Brooklyn's gym. The 12-member jury leaned in as Elliot explained. The IP address for the 2 unauthorized ATM withdrawals matches the coordinates of the Fit4Gem Wi-Fi on 68th Street. This is not Miss Brooks' habitual location? Elliot's dry delivery and precise charts left little room for doubt. Brooklyn's attorney tried to counter, "Your Honor, the insurance clause is standard industry practice. My client believed it was part of the financing package from Citi." But when pressed, Brooklyn broke under cross-examination. "I thought it was automatic," she stammered, eyes downcast. "I didn't realize it wasn't included in the initial agreement." Samantha stood. Standard practice requires full disclosure to co-signers. Ms. Hayes intentionally concealed these terms. The judge nodded, making notes. I watched Brooklyn's family in the gallery. Dad's jaw clenched, Mom's hand floating to her mouth, Aunt Margaret's face carved in concern. Each reaction was fuel for the fire roaring inside me. I realized revenge wasn't about causing pain. It was about reclaiming my dignity. Then came the highlight. Samantha invited me to provide a victim impact statement. I rose, smoothed the lapels of my suit, and faced the room. "Your Honor, I'm not here for vengeance. I'm here because trust was weaponized against me. The emotional toll nights awake, panic attacks, social humiliation when my mother publicly questioned my competence cannot be measured in dollars alone. But the financial harm is quantifiable. $15,000, 0 cents in default insurance. $4,750, 0 cents in unauthorized withdrawals. Nearly $8,500, 0 cents in limbo. And the damage to my credit score, which fell from 762 to 698. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I continued. I stand before you not as a vindictive sister, but as someone fighting to protect her future and to remind that family bonds do not grant immunity from accountability. After the plaintiff's case, Brooklyn's defense presented a lone witness. Mom, Catherine Brooks. She teared up on the stand, lamenting the public spectacle. I truly believed Madison would forgive her, she said, voice trembling. Brooklyn never intended malicious harm. The judge eyed her. Mrs. Brooks, did you review the loan documents before encouraging your daughter to co-sign? Catherine hesitated, then admitted, no, I trusted both of them. Samantha pounced. Trust between family members doesn't override statutory protections. With closing arguments, Samantha delivered a powerful finale. This isn't a family squabble, it's a case of fraud and breach of duty. Miss Brooks deserves full restitution and the removal of any liability on her co-signed loan. We asked the court to award damages totaling $19,750, 0 cents, the sum of unauthorized charges and default insurance, and to declare the Mercedes loan void. Brooklyn's counsel offered a meek counter, but the conviction in Samantha's tone overshadowed any doubt. The jury retired. My stomach churned, but I felt a zen-like calm. Weeks of preparation, every document meticulously cross-referenced, had led to this. I closed my eyes, recalling Harper's advice. Win with grace. I inhaled, picturing the moment the verdict would clear my name. When the jury filed back, Judge Monahan read their decision, in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Madison Brooks. Defendant is ordered to reimburse $19,750, 0 cents, to the plaintiff, to pay court costs, and loan servicer is directed to void the co-signed loan. Additionally, the court refers Ms. Hayes to the district attorney for potential fraud charges. A hush fell, then a swell of relief and validation. I exhaled, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Brooklyn slumped into her chair as her attorney conferred with her. Dad approached me in the hallway after court adjourned. He extended his hand, voice thick. "I'm sorry, Madison. I never should have pressured you." I looked into his eyes and simply said, "I did what was right." His grip tightened, but the apology felt hollow after months of doubt. Still, I accepted it because justice had been served. Outside, Samantha popped a bottle of Prosecco in celebration. We toasted on the courthouse steps. "To accountability," she declared. I raised my glass, and to the power of evidence. Beneath the flurry of congratulatory handshakes and camera flashes, a part of me felt closure. The tables had turned. I was no longer prey, but the architect of fairness. That evening, back in my Central Park apartment, I dissolved the tension with a quiet ritual. I poured myself a glass of Pinot Noir, placed the courtroom photographs in a drawer, and updated my shaded bookshelf with a new edition, a framed certificate from Samantha's firm Client Restitution Award, 2025. As I slid into bed, exhaustion washed over me, but it was a satisfying fatigue. Revenge had taken many forms: litigation, public exposure, financial reclamation, but ultimately, it was about restoring balance. I'd proven that betrayal, even by blood, carries consequences, and in the wake of victory, I felt not bitterness, but a tempered peace. The next chapter of my life awaited, one where I dictated the narrative, unbound by my sister's deception. The tables had been turned, and this time, I would keep them forever. I later discovered that the roots of Brooklyn's scheme ran deeper than I imagined. Over coffee at Aunt Margaret's Sag Harbor cottage, she pulled me aside, her gray curls framing a face both kind and grave. "Madison," she began softly, "I've suspected Brooklyn for years." My breath caught. Aunt Margaret revealed she'd once found Brooklyn's handwritten ledger hidden beneath a floorboard, notes detailing Plan A, Uncle's inheritance, scribbled next to figures like $48,000, 0 cents, and $15,000, 0 cents, outlining how my father's assets could be redirected to a private account. She'd confronted Brooklyn then, and Brooklyn had promised it was teenage mischief. Margaret kept quiet to protect the family name. That evening, I met our cousin Olivia Davis, a marketing executive in Chicago who'd lost touch with Brooklyn after undercutting her on a family fundraising proposal back in 2018. Olivia confessed that Brooklyn had circulated a false rumor about her stealing donor lists to boost her own campaign, costing Olivia a $25,000, 0 cent, sponsorship that year. She thrived on control, Olivia said, eyes downcast. I should have seen the pattern. Meanwhile, I learned that Brooklyn had quietly borrowed $25,000, 0 cents, from an anonymous private lender rumored to be her ex-boyfriend, after claiming she needed venture capital for a fashion startup. The money had funneled through a shell company registered in Delaware, invisible in our family trust statements. When I confronted Brooklyn about it, she dismissed it as business savvy. Aunt Margaret's final insight cut deepest. Family loyalty shouldn't blind you to betrayal. Sometimes, protecting the bloodline means exposing the rot. Those words echoed as I pieced together the full extent of Brooklyn's network of deceit. ATM withdrawals timed during my work hours, falsified medical bills, and forged documents backdated on my own laptop. This bonus glimpse into my family's undercurrents clarified one thing. The emotional violence I endured wasn't random. It was the culmination of years of manipulation, carefully honed to strike where I'd least expect it. The side story proved that revenge wasn't just me striking back. It was a reckoning for every small injustice Brooklyn had inflicted on those who dared to trust her. With these revelations, my resolve hardened. I wasn't just seeking restitution for the stolen dollars. I was unmasking a pattern of betrayal that had spanned a decade. And now, with the full story in hand, there was no going back. The morning Walter Toe arrived, the sky was a steely gray, an apt backdrop for Brooklyn's fall from grace. I watched from the curb as the driver hooked the Mercedes BRDLCA, its black paint glinting like a warning. The truck's engine rumbled, the SUV lifted, wheels spinning free air, and then it was gone out of sight, out of reach. In its place stood the last vestige of Brooklyn Hayworth's power, reduced to a flatbed trophy of her own hubris. Behind the scenes, Citibank's compliance team completed its audit. The review confirmed what Samantha Wright had uncovered. The $15,000 0 default insurance clause was never presented at the signing, and key pages of the loan contract had been swapped after dinner. On December 3, 2025, I received formal notification. The $52,300 0 principal was rescinded, $19,750 0 in unauthorized charges refunded, and all associated fees, overdraft penalties, late fines waived. For the first time since the ordeal began, my joint and personal balances were whole again, totaling $25,000 0 in available funds. Civil victory secured, I turned my attention to the criminal case. The New York County District Attorney's Office opened an investigation into Brooklyn's actions. Samantha prepped me for multiple depositions, where I recounted every forged invoice, misrepresented clause, and $4,750 0 in sneaky ATM withdrawals. Prosecutors were particularly interested in the PDF metadata trail and the covert shell company loans she'd taken out in my name. By mid-December, the DA formally indicted Brooklyn Hayes on 2 counts of grand larceny and 1 count of criminal possession of a forged instrument, charges that carried up to 7 years in state prison, and fines reaching $10,000 0. News of the indictment sent shockwaves through our social circle. My father, Jonathan Brooks, penned a heartfelt letter, laced with regret. "Maddie, I was blinded by family loyalty. I'm proud of your courage and clarity. You have my unconditional support." He followed up by transferring $25,000 0 from his discretionary fund into my brokerage account, a gesture as practical as it was symbolic. My mother, Catherine, wrote a tender apology on stationery embossed with our family crest. "I'm so sorry, dear. I never meant to doubt you. Please let me help you heal." Even Aunt Margaret and Olivia Davis stepped forward. They provided sworn affidavits detailing Brooklyn's decade-long pattern, false donor allegations that cost Olivia $25,000 0 in sponsorships, shell company loans masquerading as business investments, and strategic email deletions meant to implicate me. Their testimonies bolstered the DA's case, portraying Brooklyn not as a misguided sister, but as a calculated schemer. Public exposure followed swiftly. The New York Post headline read, "Socialites Comeuppance, Sister, Accused of Elaborate Fraud," accompanied by paparazzi snaps of the tow truck and court documents. Social media lit up with scandal memes. Brooklyn contended nationwide for 48 hours. Brooklyn's consulting firm froze her position pending its own investigation, and her LinkedIn endorsements vanished overnight. Major clients, citing morality clauses, canceled contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. On December 18, Brooklyn appeared in Manhattan criminal court. Facing the weight of evidence and potential prison time, she pleaded guilty to the misdemeanor forgery charge as part of a plea agreement. The terms were stringent. Restitution of $20,000, 0 cents to me, covering legal fees beyond the refunded charges. Completion of 100 hours of community service at the New York Legal Aid Society. 2 years probation with mandatory financial counseling sessions. Suspension of her professional license for 1 year. Judge Rosenthal, presiding, remarked, Ms. Hayes' conduct was reprehensible, but her cooperation and guilty plea warrant an opportunity for rehabilitation. The courtroom swelled with a mix of relief and sorrow, justice, tempered by the reality that family bond, once broken, could never fully heal. Our final exchange came over a monitored video call. Brooklyn's eyes were red-rimmed, her confident veneer stripped away. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen. Maddie, she whispered, voice trembling. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you like this. I paused, searching for the sister I once knew. I hope you learn the true cost of deceit, I replied evenly. Trust is earned, not assumed. Then, I ended the call. In that moment, the antagonist's downfall was complete, legally, financially, and socially. Brooklyn Hayes had lost her car, her credibility, and the illusion of familial immunity. Yet as I closed my laptop, I felt no triumphal joy, only a quiet gravity. Revenge had exacted its toll, but healing remained my own journey. The final act in this saga marked an ending both for her and for the chapter of my life defined by betrayal. Ahead lay a new chapter, one built not on retribution, but on integrity and renewal. I stood in my Park Avenue office on a crisp January morning, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and realized how far I'd come. Brooks Advisory, my dream venture, had officially opened its doors, seated with $25,000, 0 cents transferred from my father's discretionary fund. $15,000, 0 cents from Citibank's restitution, and $10,000, 0 cents raised through a targeted crowdfunding campaign. The firm focused on protecting families from the kind of betrayal I endured. The modest loft space, with its exposed brick walls and a single oak conference table, felt like a sanctuary of integrity. On the wall hung the brass compass Aunt Margaret had given me, engraved with integrity first, a daily reminder of the values that would guide every client meeting. In February, we launched the Women's Financial Alliance, a nonprofit arm designed to educate women on co-signing risks, hidden fees, and boundary setting. Our inaugural webinar, Trust But Verify: Safeguarding Your Credit in Family Deals, attracted over 500 registrants from New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Robinhood matched our first $25,000, 0 cents in donations. And the Manhattan Women's Fund contributed a $25,000, 0 cents grant, bringing us to our $100,000, 0 cents goal for 2026. Each story shared in the chat, sisters, cousins, and friends who'd lost thousands to family schemes, reinforced why this mission mattered. My routine became a blend of work, self-care, and community. Every weekday at 6 a.m., I laced up my running shoes and traced the Hudson River Greenway, recalling Samantha's words, empowerment over victimhood. Those miles cleared my mind, priming me for strategy sessions with my small but dedicated team. By April, Brooks Advisory managed over $2 million, 0 cents in client assets, advising on everything from trust account structures to forensic audits. We published our first white paper, Preventing Sibling Financial Abuse, which drew attention from CNBC's digital platform. A producer approached me for a segment, pitching it as the ultimate cautionary tale. I agreed anonymously, hoping to reach even more vulnerable clients. Back at home, healing unfolded more quietly. My relationship with my parents, once frayed by doubt and secrecy, strengthened. In March, Dad and I hosted a sourdough workshop at the Hamptons estate for neighborhood families, our laughter echoing through the kitchen as we kneaded dough and shared stories of resilience, not litigation. Mom and I revived our monthly book club, focusing on memoirs of overcoming adversity. Our latest pick, Educated by Tara Westover, sparked deep conversations about trust, autonomy, and forgiveness. Forgiveness, I learned, remains a personal journey. On Mother's Day, I drafted a letter to Brooklyn. Dear Brooklyn, I have rebuilt my life on transparency and respect. I hope you find the help you need and emerge stronger from this. I cannot undo the past, but I choose to move forward with compassion for myself and for you. Love, Maddie. I never mailed it. Instead, I placed it in my keepsake box alongside old family photos, tender reminders of what we lost and the boundaries I'd established to protect my future. In May, Brooks Advisory expanded to a second office in Chicago. We hired 2 junior advisors and a client relations coordinator, bringing our total team to 6. Our client roster diversified. Elderly parents worried about unfair co-sign arrangements, young professionals navigating joint ventures with siblings, and single mothers rebuilding credit after divorce. Each success reinforced the lessons I'd learned and the purpose that had propelled me from victim to advocate. Reflecting on the journey, I distilled 4 core lessons I share with every client and in every speaking engagement. Contracts are sacred. Never assume family ties override legal requirements. Review every clause, ask questions, and seek professional advice before co-signing. Boundaries to preserve trust. Emotional boundaries safeguard relationships. Agree on repayment terms, document conversations, and treat family loans with the same rigor as any other financial commitment. Use resources early. When red flags appear, unexplained withdrawals, vague excuses, threatening messages are immediately. Delay only worsens damage, healing beyond restitution. Winning a legal case restores finances, but emotional recovery demands community, purposeful work, and self-compassion. In June, I accepted an invitation to speak at the New York FinTech Summit. On stage, I recounted my story without naming names. Trust is the foundation of every financial decision. But unchecked trust can become a weapon. The audience of advisors, bankers, and entrepreneurs listened intently as I unveiled steps to detect red flags and protect co-signers. My talk concluded with a standing ovation, a testament to the resonance of my experience. That evening, back in my apartment overlooking Central Park, I updated my social media with a photo of Aunt Margaret's compass. The caption read, "Integrity first. In finance, in family, in life. Trust but verify." Impellment comments poured in. Incredibly inspiring. Can't wait to join the next webinar. Thank you for sharing. I smiled, heart full. From the ruins of betrayal, I'd built something far greater than restitution, a platform to prevent others from suffering similar harm. As July approached, I planned a retreat for survivors of family financial abuse, a weekend workshop combining forensic accounting basics, legal education, and guided journaling exercises. We'd convene at Aunt Margaret's Sag Harbor cottage, turning a site of past secrets into a sanctuary of healing. The invitation list included clients, friends, and even adversaries turned allies like Olivia Davis. It felt right to bring people together where my story had begun. My journey from emotional collapse to triumphant advocacy underscored one truth. Vengeance may set the stage, but empowerment changes the script. Revenge family had been the backdrop of my ordeal, but it is not my ending. My ending is defined by service, integrity, and renewal. And as I close this chapter, I carry forward every lesson etched by betrayal, ensuring that my story and those of countless others become beacons of transformation rather than tales of